Hi, it's Sharkbait Beta, or you can call me Carson, whichever one you prefer. You may know me as Sharkbait Beta over on TikTok. I'll link my TikTok down in the description of this video in case you want to go follow me over there. I just figured that if I'm going to be doing more long form videos, it would be better to do it here than on TikTok because people don't really watch entire half hour to an hour long videos over there. So yeah, seeing as this is my first video, I figured we should get started with just how to set up your first tank and some other tips and tricks, as well as, before we get into that stuff, just a little bit of an introduction about me. So, starting off with just a little bit about me. I'm 19 years old, I'm a marine science student, so I am going back and forth between my dorm and my home, which is 8 hours away. So if ever the background changes, I'm probably either at home or next year in a different housing situation. Because I do live in university housing and I am unfortunately limited to 10 gallons. And I really want a 20 gallon long. So I just can't do that yet. So I have been keeping betas for a little bit over a year. I got my first beta August of 2023. I'll be going over in another video about some mistakes that I made in my fish keeping journey, and just so that like I've learned from them, so just me talking about them can help other people learn from them and avoid making those same mistakes that I did. So that's another video for another time. But yeah, I've been keeping fish for a little bit over a year. Brick, he's right here. He's so pretty. He's my 4th or my 5th beta. I'll also be making another video on all of my betas that I've had in the past and what happened to them. But yeah, none of it was my fault, guys. Except for the one mistake that I did make. The one mistake that I did make did end up having me have to euthanize my first beta. But you know, that's a story for another time, but I've been learning. So just keep that in mind. No one's perfect. We're all still learning. But yeah, I do have some fossils. That is so off topic, but up there I have some fossils, which are really cool. Let me know if you guys want to see a video on specifically those. The first thing that I wanted to talk about was tank size. For betas, the minimum tank size is 5 gallons, but this changes depending on whether you have a short-finned beta, so that's either a female or male plakat beta, or if you have a long-finned beta. Long-finned betas, the minimum requirement stays with the minimum requirement for all betas. So the minimum requirement for long-finned betas is 5 gallons. For short-finned betas, you need 10 gallons. And that's just because they don't have as much of the heavy finish that the long-finned betas have, so they will typically have a lot more energy and they can get from one side of the tank to the other a lot faster than brick can. The next thing is it will help reduce the maintenance. So waste accumulation will occur a lot slower in a 5 gallon than it will in a 1 gallon. The way that I like to explain this is if you're trying to dye water green, we're just going to use green as an example because why not? Just random color I thought up on the top of my head. But if you have a 1 gallon container and a 5 gallon container, right, and you're trying to dye a dark forest green color, the 5 gallon container is going to need a lot more food coloring to turn it that dark green color that you want than it will need if it's the 1 gallon container. So change that to fish poop and the same concept applies. And bigger tank sizes will often also mean less maintenance. So on my 10 gallon, when it's cycled, I'm only doing maintenance like once a week or as needed. So I test my water once a week. that is considered maintenance. I do test my water once a week, and then I change my water as needed based on the levels of that. The same thing kind of goes for a 5-gallon. It might be a little bit more, but I did kind of the same thing that I did with my 10-gallon, and I was doing once a week maintenance on that as well. So if you have a tank size that's under 5 gallons, you will need to be doing daily maintenance on it just to make sure that the water parameters are in a safe range. But that being said, always have a 5 or 10 gallon tank for your betta, because all that tank maintenance can really quickly become a chore. Another thing is bowls are never okay for any fish, and that is because you can't put a filter in it and you can't put a heater in it. It's a round object. The fish can get from one side of it to the other in like half a second. So that's really not enough room. And as cute as you think it looks, abuse isn't cute. The next thing I wanted to talk about is filters. There are 3 types of filters that I will recommend to people who are just starting out, and these are sponge filters, hang-on back filters, or internal filters. The filter that I'm using right now is a sponge filter. There are multiple forms of sponge filters. This is just the one that I have. They can be power driven or air driven, and mine is power driven, so you don't need to connect air to it. But basically, that's a sponge filter. And these ones are generally recommended for bettas because they're relatively low flow. So for mine is a little bit higher flow than most sponge filters. So I don't know what's up with that, but they're relatively low flow, which is really good for your betta because if they have long fins, they're gonna get pushed around by the flow, and you just don't want that. That can lead to fin nipping, that can lead to all sorts of stress, and you just don't want that. Hang-on back filters hang on the back of the tank, basically, and then internal filters, they sit inside the tank. Do that. The one thing, though, that you should never ever do is change your filter media once a month. Never ever do that, even though the instructions say to do so. Don't do that. They're just trying to get you to come and buy more stuff, and you will completely crash your cycle by doing that. Which is another thing I'll talk about kind of in this section. But basically, filters provide surface area for the beneficial bacteria that you set up during your cycle to grow, which is going to help transform ammonia to nitrate, and it'll just help you with your tank maintenance, basically. Cycling your tank is relatively easy. It does take up to a month. So patience is a really big thing in the fish keeping hobby. I know it's hard. Just cycle your tank. Don't listen to anything that says that you can add fish immediately. That's a lie. Cycle your tank first. Wait it out. Be patient. And then go and get your fish once it's fully cycled. Basically, the way that I cycle my tanks is I ghost feed, which is basically just putting food in the tank every so often, and then testing the water. Leave everything running. Run your filter, run your heater, run whatever else in the tank that you can, and just test the levels. And once you have no ammonia, no nitrate, and between 10 and 20 parts per million of nitrates, then you're fully cycled and you're ready to add fish. I'll make another video about more in depth about cycling and how to necessarily do that. But in the meantime, until I have that video filmed, Aquarium Co-op has a really good video going over cycling and the nitrogen cycle. I'll link that in the description. Also, I'm not affiliated with them, but that's the video that I used when I was first starting out. So, you know, I'll leave that as a resource for you guys until I have that video filmed. But yeah, filters are really important. They help, you know, improve the water quality and make sure that any debris is not floating around. If your filter gets clogged, don't rinse your filter media in tap water. That will kill all of the beneficial bacteria that you've accumulated. So what you'd want to do is when you do a water change, just swish around the filter media in the water change water, and then you should be good to go. So then it's not like in tap water, it's already in conditioned water. You can just shake out whatever's clogging it and go from there. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is heaters. Bettas are tropical fish and they do best in water temperatures of 78 to 80 degrees. I have a filter back here. Most filters will tell you what tank size they are recommended for, so just keep that in mind. Don't buy a heater that's meant for a 20-gallon tank for your 10-gallon. Don't buy a heater that's made for a 5-gallon tank for your 10-gallon. Same thing, it'll say so. Just read the packaging. There are two types of heaters that you can buy. There's preset heaters and there's adjustable heaters. I personally prefer adjustable, but either one will do as long as it's a heater. I would also recommend having a thermometer just to make sure that your tank temperature is where you want it to be. If for any reason the heater's not set right or whatever, just it's always good to have one. I have a little sticker, but you know, it's not accurate at all. I have this one like sticks on the inside, so I'll break that out whenever I need to make sure my tank temperature is where it should be, but it's always good to have a thermometer laying around for that. So just keep that in mind. Bettas are tropical fish, they do need a heater, and you can get adjustable preset. The next thing I wanted to talk about is tank decorations. So bettas, they need hiding places. So like this little house down here, that little rock up there, the log, all the plants, behind the wood I have in there, those are all places that he could hide. He's got a lot of places. So he's doing good. The general rule of thumb for tank decorations is make sure there's no sharp edges. Make sure if you're buying fake plants, they're silk instead of plastic, because the plastic will have really sharp edges. And all of that, and make sure that nothing's going to be able to flake off into your tank. So if you get a decoration and it's painted or whatever, just when you rinse it, just make sure nothing's going to flake off. That can be really harmful for your fish. And just make sure everything you buy is aquarium grade. So if you buy it at a PetSmart or a Petco or a Pet Supplies Plus, you should be okay if it's in the aquarium section. The terrarium section where like the lizard stuff is, that's a little iffy, but just stick to the aquarium section and you should be okay. If you're buying on Amazon, just, you know, make sure read the reviews. If there's anything flaking or whatever, or you pull it out of the box and it's flaking already, just better to be safe than sorry and just don't put it in your tank and just go ahead and return that. But for wood, if you want to have driftwood in your tank, I like my tanks natural, if you can't tell. But Mapani wood, spider wood, those are all good woods for your tank. Upon other woods, I would avoid kala wood just because it has so many little holes. So just make sure that there's no like tiny holes in anything that your betta can get stuck in, and if there are, just like seal them up. I have seen someone take like tissue paper and like a certain type of glue. I don't remember what it was, but I think it was like cyanoacetate or something. And he glued that in the tiny holes so that the betta couldn't get stuck in it. So just keep that in mind. If there's any tiny holes, bettas are curious. I did have a shrimp feeder in here for a little bit and he swam up it and got stuck. So just keep that in mind. They're curious. They're gonna go in little tiny nooks and crannies if they can. So it's better to avoid them getting stuck than have to deal with a possibly dead fish from it being stuck in something. The next thing, just make sure nothing's unnaturally dyed. So this goes for nerds. Nerds is what I call the neon aquarium gravel. That's all kinds of different colors and rainbow. So any gravel that's dyed unnatural colors or sand that's dyed unnatural colors, you're going to want to avoid because it can and will leach the chemicals and dyes out into the water. So what I use the fluval aqua soil, which is the dark stuff, and then I have a layer of sand over on the other side, just to give it a little bit of contrast. Plant wise, you don't need live plants. I have live plants, but you don't need them. If you're just starting out, I would recommend soak plants, just so that you're not also having to maintain water quality for the plants. I have some Rotala back there, which is that like leafy stuff in the back. I also have a couple that are propagating out in front of the thing. Rotala, it's considered a stem plant. You can cut it along the stem and replant that part wherever, and it'll just grow. Which is why I got it, because I can put it wherever and I can make little offshoots of it, and they're already growing really fast. But for beginner plants, I would recommend Anubias, Java Fern. My Anubias isn't in here right now because it decided to drop all of its leaves and die. I'm not sure what happened, but it just died. So this plant right here, that is Java Fern. I've also heard Amazon Sword is pretty good. But Java Fern and Anubias and I think Amazon Sword you can get at PetSmart or Petco. I know you can get banana plants at Petco also. So just, you know, anything that they sell at the pet store is generally okay for beginners. They also sell like the Betta bulbs. So they'll just also, those will grow, but it's kind of hard in a new tank because they doesn't have as much of the nutrients that they need. I got them for my first tank and none of them grew. Yeah, none of them grew, so I might try them again, but yeah. I think that's it for decorations, but yeah, just make sure there's no sharp edges, make sure there's no tiny holes. One thing about driftwood though is that it will release tannins into your water, which will turn your water into this kind of like yellowy brown color. If you don't like it, you can always do a water change, it'll get rid of it. But for me, I like my natural tanks, so I have no problem with tannins being in the water. It's just personal preference on if you want them in the water or not. They will also kind of help like decrease like light, what's the word? The light going into the tank. There's a word for it. It's not coming to me, but it'll just make light penetration. It will decrease the light penetration into the tank. So just keep that in mind. The next thing is just some things that you're going to need. So I have a bunch of stuff in this little drawer here. If you have plants, I recommend having some sort of fertilizer. I use Seachem Flourish. This is a really big bottle, so you don't need this huge bottle, but I got this from a local fish store, and this is the only size bottle that they had. The next thing is you're gonna want some water conditioner, so I use Seachem Prime. This stuff smells like sulfur, so keep in mind it's normal. I also use Quick Start. I also use this when I'm starting my cycle. It basically just makes sure that it's got beneficial bacteria in it. I've heard a lot of people say that it's got nothing in there. But I just like to dose it also when I'm doing the water changes just to keep those colonies alive and going. I also have another water conditioner that I use. But yeah, I always have extra. And when I do my weekly water changes, so I'll mix the fertilizer into the new water that I'm putting in instead of just putting it straight in the tank. I am so sorry. My Tamagotchi keeps beeping at me. We're going to ignore that because it keeps beeping. You're also going to need the API Freshwater Master Test Kit just to test your water. I know it's expensive, but it's worth it in the long run because you get over 800 tests. I also recommend getting a little squeezy thing. I don't know the word for this. Does anyone know the word for this? This thing. One of these squeezy things. Rather than sticking your entire hand in the tank trying to get water out. Mine has glass bottles. There's ones with plastic bottles. But yeah, you have to be really careful not to drop these anywhere. If you have plants, I recommend aquascaping tools. Just so that you can trim stuff and do all those fun things. That's like 2 times in 3 minutes. We're going to ignore my Tamagotchi. He's annoying. You'll also need a gravel vacuum and a bucket. But I'm getting ready to do a water change right now, so they're not. I can't show you them right now. But yeah. Other than food, just make sure you have food. Food, Basically, just make sure it's not high in plant content and you should be good. I live by fluval bug bites. I've never had a beta that won't eat them. Just make sure like they're like the kind of like pellety form instead of like the flake form, because he won't eat the flakes. So I did find a Walmart dupe of the fluval bug bites, so I've been using that and he's been eating that fine. So just make sure there's not high plant content. Betas are obviously carnivores, so they can't really digest plants properly. You can feed them live brine shrimp, you can feed them frozen brine shrimp, you can feed them frozen bloodworms. There's a whole bunch of other things that you can feed them. Just make sure you do your research and make sure that the food you're feeding them is appropriate. Another just little tips. Wood will develop a sort of biofilm. A lot of people say biofilm or mold. It's normal. It'll go away once it's seeped all the nutrients and sugars from the wood. Don't worry about it. It'll go away. Mine had it for a little bit and now it's gone and we're good. But just keep that in mind. The top of your tank will also kind of pick up a little bit of a biofilm with the low flow, so you can get a bubbler or surface agitation to get rid of that. Or you can do what I did and get a surface skimmer, which is that little thing over there. It also kind of doubles as extra surface area for the biological the beneficial bacteria to grow on. But basically, I had a really thick, ugly, nasty layer of biofilm on the top of my tank a while ago, and I got that and we're good. But I do have to change out the sponge because it's full already. So, and the reason why it was so thick is because I over fertilized, because my fertilizer doesn't really have directions for 10 gallons and there's no measure mark for 10 gallons. It's like 5 milliliters for like 100 liters or something. So that's a lot. And yeah, so I'm still trying to figure out how much I actually have to put in my tank. So that's one thing. Make sure you know how much you're supposed to put in, because fertilizer can very quickly make a big giant biofilm on the top of your tank. It's ugly. It was so bad. it was so bad. Like, I don't even want to talk about how bad it was, but it was bad. So just, you know, right now it's a normal biofilm, so we're good. It's a normal biofilm, but if it's really thick, you're gonna want to do something about that. I got my skimmer at Petco, actually, so we're good. What other things? Make sure you sign up for the rewards programs. Go when things are on sale to save money. Yeah, moving on to tank mates. Tank mates are really, like, other fish with your beta are only really recommended if you have a 20-gallon tank, like a 20-gallon long, just because of like the swimming space requirements and stuff. My Harlequin Rasboras, however, I have a friend who got some for their beta and it didn't work out, and I'm like, okay, I'll see if my beta will tolerate them. So they are in a 10-gallon for now. Once I'm able to upgrade to a 20-gallon long, I will, but I'm kind of stuck with housing limits here. So it just means a little bit extra maintenance for me and making sure my beta is not aggressive towards them. But he's been fine. Like, he's not been bugging with them at all. Like, he will flare at them occasionally if, like, they're right in his face, but they swim away. They're fast enough to get away. His nickname is Prick because when I put the first shrimp in the tank, he ate it. So he cannot have shrimp. He hates shrimp, but he's fine with fish. So I'm glad we figured that one out. But I do think they look really nice in the tank. They're chilling. They're good. I do have to go out and get some Tetra food because they won't eat the flakes that I have from my dwarf gourami, even though they're tropical and will double for Tetra food. But yeah, 5 and 10 gallon tanks. You can do shrimp or you can do snails. I have 2 narites in there. I did have shrimp, but I ended up rehoming the shrimp because somebody ate the first one that I put in the tank. So I didn't put the rest of them in. I gave them to my friend. And I'm like, yeah, maybe not. No shrimp for you. And then I was like debating on whether or not I'd get other tank mates for him. And I'm just like, you know what? Let's try some fish and see how he does. So before my friend gave me these, I have another friend who had a couple tetras, and I was like, hey, listen, like, can I just borrow one? It's really weird. I'm like, hey, can I just borrow one and just see how my fish does with it? And it was chill, and she's like, yeah. And I'm like, I promise I will give him back if my fish doesn't kill him. And so I left them in there with them for a day, and they were fine. No problems, no aggression, no whatever. Just, you know, Brick asserting his dominance. And he was fine. So I returned the fish to my friend. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go out and get some fish. Next thing I wanted to talk about is tank mates. So we're going to ignore the fact that I have fish tank mates in a 10-gallon. This is a really debated topic. A really debated topic. So a lot of people will say that you can, and then some people will say you can't. So if you're just starting out, right, I always recommend a 20-gallon log for having a community tank. So mine is technically considered a community because there's a Betta, there's some harlequin reservoirs in there, and there's 2 narrate snails, and there's some bladder snails in there that came off of one of my friend's plants that she gave me. So that being said, if you want to do a community tank, do a 20-gallon log. The only reason I have the reservoirs in here is because I got them off of a friend who bought them, and they didn't work out with their Betta and their 20-gallon log, and I'm the only person that she knew that has a tank that can take them. So I took them, and I'm just taking on the extra maintenance because more bioload means more maintenance. So I'm taking that on and just doing it. It's just really debated on whether or not you can have fish tank mates in a 10-gallon with the Betta. I've had people tell me, yes, you can. I've had people tell me, no, you can't. So, you know, just go with bigger if you're going to have tank mates. Don't do this. But 5 and 10 gallons, you can have shrimp or you're going to have snails. So keep that in mind. Just because I have fish with my Betta in a 10-gallon doesn't mean you should. So don't use this as an example. Stocking wise, plant wise, decoration wise, tank size wise, equipment wise, sure, go right ahead. Just stocking wise, don't listen to me. Stocking wise, don't do what's in my tank, because that'll be a lot more maintenance on you. And I will be upgrading to a 20-gallon long when I can. I'm limited to 10 gallons on campus, so I can't right now. But also, moving on to some tips and tricks. Saving money-wise, always go when there's things on sale. Sign up for all the rewards memberships you can. A lot of them are free to sign up for. Go when things are on sale. Look on Facebook Marketplace. See if anyone around you has used stuff that they no longer use and can give to you. Another thing is, join a group around you that for fish keeping or Betta keeping, so that you can ask more experienced people questions. You can borrow stuff if they're near you. If it's a community group or something, they can like give you something. If you need someone to come look at your tank, they can. Just make sure that you have a way to ask questions to people who have been in the hobby a little bit longer. I'm probably going to set up a Discord server. I will link that in the description. I'll probably make that before I post the video, just so that it's a resource for you And if you're watching this and you're more experienced and you want to join, please feel free to do that. Just so that people who are just starting out on their journey can ask questions, and I will be responding to as many as I know the answer to. But I don't know everything. I don't think anyone really knows everything, but you know, if someone has more experience, they might know a lot more and be able to help a lot more than someone who just started out a little over a year ago, like me. But generally, I'm still learning. Everyone's still learning. Everyone is still learning. So, yeah. Moving on to some general tips and tricks. I would recommend joining a group on Discord or Facebook or wherever about fish keeping. You might meet someone that's close by and can help you set things up and stuff. So I always recommend joining one of those because you can get in contact with people who have more experience than you and will be able to help. So always do that. I'm going to be setting up a Discord server after I finish filming this, and I will put it in the description. Once it gets a little bit bigger, like big enough to have a lot of people, I will be looking for mods, so keep that in mind. While it's small, I can handle moderating the entire server. I might have one other person with me, but if you're interested, just like, you know, let me know in the comments or DM me on TikTok or just message me on Discord because I'll put that down there too. But yeah, just keep that in mind if you are interested in that. The next thing, sign up for rewards memberships at the pet stores around you. You can do this online, you can do this at the stores. This will basically just like give you member prices and earn you points towards future purchases. Also, go when things are on sale. Petco has half off sales all the time, and they also have some $1 per gallon sales. And they also have like this like bucket sale where you go, you buy the bucket, and anything that you can fit in the bucket is half off, I think. That's what I know, at least. But yeah, they have sales all the time, so if you want a free bucket, not a free bucket, but you know, a bucket and a lot of other stuff, there's that sale. That doesn't count towards live fish though. So, equipment wise, that's a good one to do for equipment. And then you get a bucket out of it also for water changes. I probably need to get a second bucket for water changes, but yeah, that's that. The last thing is algae is normal. It happens. Don't beat yourself up over it. It's going to happen in a tropical tank. What I recommend getting is algae scrapers for the glass, and then you can get like a toothbrush, like a clean toothbrush from the store. Get from the dollar store if you really want to, and you can use that to brush it off of decorations and stuff. It's also really good for if you get hair algae. You could like twist it around like a spaghetti noodle. That's really weird to say. You can twist it around like a spaghetti noodle. But yeah, and then yeah, if there's any questions, just pop them in the comments, and I will get back to them as soon as I can.